Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of DevDrawer. Today we're going to be continuing the external API e-commerce solution that we've created using HTML, CSS, and jQuery. If you are not aware, this is actually the third video in the series, so you have two other videos that you need to be looking at before you get to this point. But basically where we're at right now is we are using this fake store API that I found that's pretty cool. It's kind of limited, and I'll show you some of the limitations whenever we get into creating and authenticating users. But for right now, we're using that to pull down these products, as well as any categories that we have, as well as the individual product pages. So all of this information is dynamically populated, and again, this came from the past two videos that we've done. So if you are not subscribed and you want to see videos like that, definitely subscribe, hit the bell notification, because I try to do a video once a week, and my videos are very similar to this, usually PHP, WordPress based, server based, but right now I'm kind of focusing on the front end code using APIs that could be either built by you or built by someone externally or built by a fake store API like we're using for this one. So let's go ahead and get started. Whenever you're visiting the site as it is, there's currently no authentication. And if you click here, it's obviously we don't have this page created yet. We'll get into that in one of our next videos. But I mean, there's nothing authenticating you to log in, view your account information, or anything like that. We only have a login page. So if I go to /login.html, obviously it's blank. So what I want to do now is create this page and actually start setting some user variables, because in our API there is some user settings over here. Now earlier I mentioned that the API is kind of limited, so they have this user login, but the limitation is that it doesn't really care what you put in for a password. As long as the username matches one of the users in this get all, it'll authenticate. But it also doesn't send back information that it's authenticating. It basically just sends over a token. So it's not really useful, so I'm actually not going to be using the user login part of this API. If your API that you're using is a little more robust than this, then you can kind of skip over some of the stuff that I'm doing, just kind of get the basic functionality. But the way that I'm going to be doing it here is going to be adhering to the way that the API is built, not necessarily how I would do it in the real world, just because the limitations of it is basically, in order to get a single user, you need to have an ID. In order to get an ID, you need to grab all of the users. So what you would typically do is use some kind of session variable that's being set here, where it grabs the token, grabs the information like the ID that's required to pull the other information. But currently that's not being returned in this API, so there may be a better solution out there, or it may be the developer of this API can integrate something like that into it. But for right now, we're going to have to grab all of the users and then validate it based on the username and password that is submitted. So it's kind of a roundabout way to do it. Essentially, you would do exactly this, except you wouldn't be hitting an API that pulls every user, because this is kind of overkill for what we're wanting to do. But we're going to be doing it for this, so just bear with me as we do it. Let's go ahead and start with it. I'm just going to close down everything that I currently have open, just because we don't need any of those anymore, and I'm going to start creating some pages. So let's create a new file. We're going to call it login.html. Then we're going to create another new file. We're going to call it logout.html, and then finally we're going to create a new file called account.html. So login, logout, and account. These are going to be the three files that we use that corresponds with the JavaScript that we're going to create as well. Speaking of JavaScript, let's go ahead and create a new file, and we're going to call this user.js. This is where all of our user information is going to be stored. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and open up the initialize.js just to have it kind of open whenever we go to set up the rest of it. Alright, so let's go ahead and reference this JavaScript. So I'm going to copy the products that we've done last time, and we're going to reference this user.js, and then we're also going to create a function, and we're going to call it user.info. So then down here we're going to actually build out that function. Let's do var user.info equals function. And basically this is going to be our call to the class that we're going to build for inside of user.js. So let's go ahead and create that class, or reference that class. So we're going to do let user equal new user. So on this side of it, we're actually going to build out this user.js class. So let's start doing that. So class user, and let's start with the constructor. Okay, so constructor, not going to pass anything to it, and then like our other constructor classes, or class constructors that we have, we're just going to create this API URL so we kind of keep it synchronized with the rest of the script that we're going to use. And it's basically just calling the API URL for this fake store API. Let's create a function. We're going to create a function called doLogin, and then in this we're going to pass a username and a password. This is where we're going to actually build out the script to log into the website. Let's get rid of this and go back over here, and let's go to build out the actual form for it. So inside of our login page, let me open up, sure, let's just do the index. I'm just going to copy paste the index just so we have everything in it, and let's see, what do we want to keep inside of this? I don't think we need to keep really anything inside of it, so let's get rid of everything from the container fluid down. And then newest products, don't need this either. We don't need this image or anything like that because we're going to have it just a login form here. So let's do the first one. We're going to do div row, and then we want to have div column md6, and then inside of that we want to have div card, and then finally div dot card body. Just in case you're wondering and you haven't seen any of my other videos, this was all done with Emmet. So if you're familiar with Emmet, then you should know what I just did, but basically it built out the structure of the HTML for me without me having to do too much work into doing it. Okay, so we want to have a column MD6, but we also want to have this column be centered inside of the screen. So we're going to use a bootstrap class called justify dash content dash center, and then that should justify this content in the center of the screen for us. So now you can see it's kind of centered over here, and it's 6 columns wide, but it's centered inside it without us having to put any padding or anything around it. That's just a bootstrap class. Okay, so let's go ahead and do h1 log into your account, capitalize this. All right, and now we're going to do our form. So form method is just going to be post. We don't need to do an action because we're going to use JavaScript to do everything, and then we're going to call this class login so that we can reference it in our JavaScript. Okay, so we have our form, so we need to do an input. So let's do input dot form control, and it's type text. So we're going to do ID username and name username just to have it where we have it there. We're not going to add a value to it currently, so let's add a label. So we're going to do label for username, and then this label is just going to be username, and then we need to do another input, so input, and then it's going to be form control again, and this is going to be ID equals password. My typing is terrible again. I gotta get better at this typing thing. You would think after all the years that I've been typing I'd be pretty good at it. Alright, so label for password, and this is going to be password. Also, we don't want to have this be text, so we're going to change it to password so it hides what's coming in. And then finally we're just going to do a paragraph tag with a button. We're not going to do the type because it's going to be a submit, So we're going to do button class equals btn large, and then btn, let's just do primary. And then this is going to be login. Alright, so now our form is kind of the way I want it. I'm going to go down here and just add in some break tags for now, just to get that kind of separated. Okay, so now we have the functionality that we want for our login form. Let's see, I want to make it, let's do the container fluid. I'm going to give it a style of min height, let's say like 50 vertical height, just so it kind of pushes down that screen a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. So I was actually wanting to push it all the way down, but I think it's because of how zoomed in I am. So if I went back to 100, you know, it's where I want it to be at. So let me zoom out back so you can see everything that's going on. So we have the login information. I'm going to put a break tag or two underneath this so it pushes it down like that. All right. And maybe also have the same thing here. There we go. Just to kind of clean it up a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do is, if we look at get all and we look at what's being sent over, they have username, password, so I'm going to send over this username and password. So just so I don't have to keep retyping it, I'm going to come over here and do value for the username equals John D, because that's what they have listed here as the username. And then the password, I'm just going to copy this and we're going to fill that in as well. So value equals that. Now, you wouldn't have that in real time. Remove it definitely when you get done testing this out. But we're going to have it in there just so we don't have to keep retyping it. Now, so if we submit the form, it doesn't do anything because it's basically redirecting to itself because there's no action to it. So what we're going to do is use JavaScript to redirect it to where we want it to go. So let's go down here to let new user. Let me see. Did I call that form the login? Let's see, form class login. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, if the form login, so form.login.submit, and then we're going to pass a function, and then we're going to do prevent default. So that way it won't break the form whenever it goes to submit it. Wait, something's wrong here. Oh, there we go. All right. So now what we want to do is create two variables, because inside of our user.js we're passing username and password. So we want to create those variables. So let's do var username equals the username field that we created. So username.value, and then we're going to do var password equals the password field. And let's go ahead and pass these as IDs because we did declare those as IDs, so we don't have to go in there and do any class with them. Okay, so now we have our username and password are being gathered into variables, so we're going to pass it to the user, do login, and then we're going to do username, password. So now I'm going to open up this user.js and I'm just going to do a console log of the username and then a console log of the password. Alright, so now if I open up the console log here and then we go to submit this, you can see the John D and the password is being submitted and it's not showing us that error anymore. So inside of this, like I said, we need to hit this and then kind of iterate through these, find the one that matches our username and password, which again is not a best practice. A best practice would be something where you're sending over a username and password and then you're actually returning the information based off of that username and password in the fields, not pulling it from a JSON outputted list that's coming from your database. So this isn't the best way to do it, but the functionality will still be the same. You would just be calling it to a specific URL for authentication rather than a list of all the users. But this is what we're working with this fake store API. So I figured I'd show you how to do this. Okay, so inside of this, we need to start doing our AJAX. Get rid of this because we know it's working. So we need to start doing our AJAX. So let's go ahead and do $AJAX, and then we're going to open this up, and then the type is going to be get, because we're getting a variable, we're not adding anything to it, we're not posting anything, and then the URL is going to be this.api URL, which we declared up here, and then plus users, because their URL is users. So the URL that we're passing is this, and then we're adding users to it. So now that we have, no, we don't need this. Now that we have this, we need to do the success. So we're going to do a success function. We're going to grab that data from the success, and then we are going to iterate through it. So first, before we do all of that, let's see what it's producing for us. So console log data, and right now it should be producing a whole bunch of users that we just really don't need. So let's hit login. You can see it's producing 10 users. This is all of the users. If we tried any of these usernames and password combinations, it'll go through, just because we don't have anything that's validating it right now. So we're grabbing all the users, which again, not best practice. Just rewind the video a little bit so I can explain why that's not the best practice, but definitely not best practice. But this is what we have to work with. So let's keep working with it. So we're grabbing our data, and we want to store this data somewhere that can be used for the rest of the website. So if you're not familiar with local storage for JavaScript, I definitely recommend getting familiar with local storage, because we will be using local storage in here, and it basically displays it inside of this application local storage, and you'll see some variables start populating here when we go to reload this thing again. So let's go ahead and create the variables and gather the information that we need. Okay, so we can get rid of this for now. Actually, let me leave it open so you can see what data needs to be produced. So we're going to do data.each, and then we're going to run a function, and we're going to pass the index and a user array to this statement. And now this is the part where I'm kind of manipulating the code to work with the API. So we're going to check to see if the user, don't need this. So if the user.username equals the past username, and the user.password equals the password. So if they equal each other, we want to set a local storage item. So we're going to do local storage dot set item, and then we're just going to pass the entire array to a user variable in the local storage. But in order to do that, we're going to do JSON stringify, and then we're going to pass the user variable that we're declaring up here. So it's going to pass the entire variable as an array. Let's see what is happening here. I need to close that. There we go. Okay, so if it's correct, then it'll pass it. So let's go ahead and test that out and see if it actually adds something here. So if we hit login now, you can see it's adding over this login information. If we refresh the screen, currently it stores this information. We don't want it to do that, because if you're using, once we have a logout screen, if you don't manipulate this on logout or whenever it goes to check information, it's always going to be present, which means that it's not going to run this function anymore. So before we get to the AJAX part of it, we're going to create a local storage, and then we're going to clear it out, just so it clears out anything that's present inside of this. So as soon as we hit it, it flashes off, and then it reloads itself again. So that's what we wanted to do. So now if we do John DD and we go to log in, it doesn't store anything. Whereas if we didn't do this local storage clear, it would essentially just keep running the same exact thing even though it's not finding what it needs to. So let's store it again, and now let's create a error message. So inside of this, if it's gathering the information that it needs, we're getting the local storage, we're setting it, so we're going to now do an if statement. If the local storage is set, we're going to redirect them to the account.html. If it's not set, we're going to alert them and let them know their password or username is incorrect. So we're going to do if local storage dot get item and user, and if it's not, or if it's not equal to null, we want it to redirect them. So we're going to do window.location .href, and then it's going to equal /account.html. So if they are correct, it's going to log them in. If not, we want to display an alert message. So inside of our login.html, we need to create a login message. So let's come down here and do div class equals login message. Okay, so this HTML will display if a value is incorrect or correct. So we're going to use a bootstrap alert for this. So login message.html, and then we're going to pass div class equals alert danger role equals alert, and this doesn't need to be double quotes, do single quotes here. Close out our div, and now we want it to say your password or username is invalid, please try again. Okay, so now if we go back to our page and we go to click login right now, it redirects us to, something's wrong here. Okay, let me see how it's closing everything out. So this is the Ajax, this is the success, this is the if statement. So where am I missing? I'm missing a closing something somewhere. HTML. Oh, what happened here? I don't know, I added a D somewhere. Okay, I have no idea why that happened, but apparently I mistyped something. So let's go back and refresh this again. So if we hit login, that's going to redirect us to account.html. So let's go back to this page, and let's say if we type in a wrong username and password, it should give us an error message. So your username or password is invalid, please try it again. So that's what we want it to do. We want it to log in whenever they are whenever they have the correct username and password. Again, not the best way to do it, but you can see the way that I'm going about it. That's kind of what you want it to do. So now we have our login page working, so let's do our logout page so that we can recreate this. So in our login, logout page, I'm just going to copy over the login information and paste it in the logout, and then I'm going to open up our logout.html. So logout.html. So right now it says the same thing that our previous one did. So we are going to we're going to change it here. So this is our logout. We're going to say successfully logged out. And also I want to do class equals text center. So text center there, and then we can get rid of this form because we no longer need this anymore. And let's just go ahead and just put a regular message. So you have been successfully logged out, and then let's add a button to it that brings them back to the home page or back to the login screen in case they want to go back to it. So login.html, and then so login again, and I think I need to separate that. Login again. Let's do class equals btn primary, and then btn large. Okay, so now we have this login, logout. Actually, let me do, instead of doing on here, I want to have all of it centered. There we go. Alright, so now we've been successfully logged out, so if we click on login again, it brings us back to this page. But the thing that's going to be messing with us is that when we log in, it's going to redirect us to the account. So if we do the logout page, there's nothing that clears that session. So now we're logged out, but if we click on this again, it's still stored here. So what we want to do is get rid of that stored information. So we're going to write a script that handles our logout information. And I think that we need to do that at the top. And I also think I'm going to move our function, put it above our template declarations for the header and the footer. That way that we can kind of control it here. So up here, what we want to do is we want to first check to see if the user is present, and actually no, we'll do that later. We'll do this part later. What I want to do right now is to make it where they log out. So let me see, how did I do that before? Where did I put that at? I'm just looking through my code. There's a section in here that I cannot find. How did I do my logout? There's going to be a clear. So let me look and see inside of this user.js. There's a clear somewhere. So we have the local storage clear here, but that's not where we need it at. We need it to be on the logout page. So if we do logout here, and okay, I got it. So I looked through the code that I created for this tutorial and found out that here I have a section that if it checks to see if the logout exists. So that's why I moved it. So if .logout length so if the logout class exists, we're going to do local storage .clear, and then on our logout page I'm going to add a class up here, class logout. Okay, so now if we go back one to the logout page and we refresh this, it clears out our session. So if we go to login again, there's nothing here. We hit login, then it adds that session again. And if we hit log out, that brings us back over here, clears that session, and then we can log in again. So that's how we do that. Okay, so now we have our account HTML page. We hit login. Where's that going? Account.html. It's blank. Well, of course it is because I haven't added any content. So let's do, I'm going to take this logout page because it is the simplest. I'm just going to copy it over, paste it, and we're going to remove this class and remove this minimum height requirement and this justify content center because we are going to be doing 2 columns here. So we want to have a, I'm trying to think, let's do column MD8 where it's going to have the information actually stored, and get rid of this, and let's change this to your account. Okay, so now we're on your account, and while I'm here, let me just close this down so you can see it a little bit better. We can get rid of this now. Okay, so now we're on your account, and actually I'm going to take this outside of the card just because I don't want it to be kind of, it's going to look weird being on the left side inside the card. Okay, so now your account, and then we can do another column here, so div class column. We're not going to use anything for it right now. I'm thinking maybe in the future we could store some carts or something like that based on their account, but for right now it's just going to be a blank section. But inside of this section, we want to have information about being able to update the account. We are not going to update the account in these tutorials just because the API that we're using, it doesn't store that kind of information, so it would be pointless to kind of go through that process. But once you kind of learn about the other aspects of the API, then once you're hitting your own, it shouldn't be that difficult. I might go into doing it eventually, but for right now, I'm not going to worry about it right now. All right, let's see. Also, just because I want to have this on it as well. So home your account, just to have that breadcrumb, since everything else has a breadcrumb as well. Wait, why aren't those pages working? Oh, I didn't even create those pages? Okay, well, I'll create those pages here. I think I just got the generic look of it set up. I'll create those pages. They're just dummy pages, so it won't take too long. But for right now, let's just go through and start creating some contact forms. Or not contact forms, but some account forms. So let's do form method equals post. And then this is going to be class equals update account. Close this down. And then inside of this, we are going to just create the variables that we need. Let me move this over so I can see a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to create the variables that we need in order to show information about the account. So let's do input form control, and let's do ID equals username and name equals username. And then for the label, now this one doesn't have to be a 4 because this is going to be a read-only value. So user name, and then let's make this read only. Okay, so what we want to do is whenever someone logs in, we want to grab that information that we're currently storing inside of our local storage, and we want to display it inside of this form. So I'm going to create another function. So this is going to be get account info, and then we're going to pass that user local storage that's been created. Alright, so now we have some variables that we need to create, so just bear with me a second as I create those. So we're going to need to do username, and then this one's going to be .val, and we'll grab the values of this in just a second. So we're going to do username, first name, last name, phone, email, address, city, state. That's all the information that's contained inside of the array. So first name, last name, phone, email, and then we're going to do address and city, and finally state. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do a console.log of what we are sending over as this user, and I'm going to copy this function, and we're going to open up our initialize.js, and then inside of our user information we are going to grab to see if it's this user account page. So if user account dot length, L-E-N-G-T-H, and if it is, then we're going to run it. So var user account equals this local storage dot user. So we can't pass the local storage as it's being sent over because it's basically a JSON array. So we're going to have to do JSON.parse, and then it's going to parse out that array, or that JSON string, into an array that we can use and iterate through. So we're going to do user.getAccountInformation, and then we're going to pass over this user account variable. So now on this screen we should be able to inspect, go to console, and currently nothing is happening. So let's see what's happening here. console log user. It's not producing anything, so let's see why it's not. Oh, maybe because if I call the correct class and it still doesn't. Okay, what's wrong here? Did we add it? So I think I need to do on our user, I think we need to add user account here. So where is it at? So I think, let's see, what are we trying to do here? So if user account.length, I'm going to do, let's do user account here. Alright, so that gives us an error message, but let's see what it's trying to do on this side. So we are parsing it on 46 local storage.user. So where are we need to declare that? So let's see, where is the local storage user? Okay, well I think we are declaring it correctly, but I don't think we're logged in currently. So let's log in, because there's nothing stored. If we click on application here, there's nothing stored. So let's go to login, get some information stored, and now let's go to the console. There we go. Alright, so now it's displaying what we want it to. It's got all the information, as you can see here, name, first name, last name, address, email, and it doesn't have all of the stuff that you would need, but again, take it as it is. This is just a general tutorial on how to pull from an API, so you should be able to kind of manipulate what's coming over to grab what you want. Okay, so now let's go back to our user.js, and we can see that we're grabbing all of this information, so let's start parsing that information where it needs to go. So we're going to do user.username, so it appears inside of our username field here, which is exactly what we want. So now that we have the information, we need to create the other fields. So fname, lname, phone, email address, city, state. So let's go back to our account.html, and then inside of this, we're going to start creating the other variables for our form. Okay, I'm just going to slowly, try to go as fast as I can. But let's create sections. So let's do h3 personal information. And then we want to do div dot row. Then we want to have div dot column md6 times 2. And then inside of those we want to have inp. No, this inp. So we have an input on each one of them, which is what we want. And let's say the first one is going to be fname. And this one is going to be lname. And then we also want to create a label for it. So label for equals fname, and then this is going to be first name. Then let's create another label here. So we're going to do label for lname. Last name. Okay, so we have first name, last name. We also need to add form control. I forgot to do that. Class equals form control. Then let's also do this one. Class equals form control. Okay, that looks better. Alright, so now we have that. Let's come down a little bit more, and we're going to create another input, and then it's going to be form control, and this one's going to be phone. So phone here. Then let's do label for equals phone. And then let's do another one. So we're going to do imp.form control. And then this one's going to be email. It's kind of redundant, so just bear with me. Label for equals email. And just to make sure that our JavaScript is working, which it should be, let's go ahead and fill these out. So if we look at the array that we're getting, we have a name and then first name, last name. So it's going to have to be user.name.firstname and then user.name.lastname. And then we can also, I think we have the reference here, we have email and phone. So we just need to do user.phone, user.email, and let's go ahead and do our address as well. So inside of the address we have address, number, city, street, zip code. So no state, so we're gonna have to get rid of this and change this to zip code. So zip, and then here let's do user.address.zipcode. Then we have user.address.city, and then we have user address, number, and street. So let's do user.address.number plus user.address.street. Alright, so those will be available whenever we need them. For now, the rest of them seem like they're populating the way we want them to. So let's keep going down our list, and let's add another section. So h3 address, and we're going to do IMP form control, and let's just do times, we need 3 of them, so times 3. Okay, so we have 3 inputs now, and for the address, I think that one's just going to be fine the way it is. So let's do address. Is that what we called it here? Yes, address. So an ID, name, and then let's do label for address. And then we want to wrap these, the city and the zip code, we're going to put them inside of a class. So div row div.column md6 times 2, and then we're just going to paste. All right, let's go ahead and write them out. So this is going to be city, and let's do the label for it. So label for equals city, and now we can copy this and paste it in here. And then finally we need to do zip, then label for equals zip code. And let's paste that here. Alright, so now looks like it's gathering the information that we want it to as well. So we have our address, city, and zip code. Is it passing a state that we can use? I don't think so. So zip code, street, number, geolocation, city. So that's it. That's all it's passing to us. That's fine. Your API may pass additional information. This one's just passing this, which that's fine. We'll just leave that as it is. So let's see. The last thing we want to do in this form, even though we're not going to use it, just to have a reference to it, we can do button class equals btn large, and then let's do btn success, and then this is going to be update account. Alright, so even though we're not going to use it, that should be sufficient for what we need. Let me close out of this. So this is what our account page looks like. So now if we go to logout.html, and we are successfully logged out. So if we go to look at our application, nothing's being stored, which is what we want. But if we click over and we go back to our account page without being logged in, currently, if I can spell it right, it's going to display the page, but it's not going to display any information. So what we need to do is prevent that from happening. We need to make it where whenever the information is not present, it redirects you back to the login page. So in order to do that, I'm going to add a class up here, so user account, then I'm also going to call an auth class. So every page that I want to have protected by this login, I'm going to create this class called auth. And then inside of our JavaScript, which I was going to do initially, is we're going to check to see if this auth length is present, as well as the local storage. So if we do if local storage dot get item and then user equals null, and the auth class is present, so dot, oh, where am I going? Dot length, then we want it to redirect to the login screen. So we're going to do window dot location href equals slash login dot html. There we go. So now we're not logged in, so we try to go to the account page. It's going to bring us back to the login page. But if we log in, now we can see our account page. So if we click on the log out, I really got to learn how to spell logout.html, and right now we're logged out. So if we try to go to the account page again, it's going to bring us back to the login. So now it's kind of got that page protected. And also think I want to add that to the logout page as well, just because I don't want them to be able to access the logout page without being logged in first. So right now if we click on log out without being logged in, it's going to say we were successfully logged out. So let's just add the auth class here, and it's going to bring us back to the login page. So if we try to do log out again, it brings us back. So if we log in, everything's fine. So now there's currently no way to kind of navigate around here if you're logged into it. So if you're logged in, then we want it to display like an account page and a logout page link up here. If you're not, then it's just going to be like a login link. So in order to do that, we need to modify our initialize.js, and we're going to go here. So we have nav placeholder. We want to add it to this, so we need to make it come after this. If it is, we are going to, so we're going to check to see if local storage get item user, if it is null, we want it to display something. Otherwise, we want it to display something else. So let's open up our template navigation HTML, and we're going to add in a new section in here that allows us to add a new link to it. So what I'm going to do for right now, I'm just going to copy this UL tag, and I'm just going to put it at the bottom down here and remove all of the stuff inside of it. So we don't need any of this inside of it. But I just want to have this here because it'll keep it where it's lined up. So if I clear it back out, you can see what it's doing. It's adding some navigation to the right side of the screen, but it's obviously not the navigation that we want at the moment. So actually, let me keep one of them just so I can use it as a reference. Now let's create a new class on this, and we're going to call it account nav. So in this account nav, I'm going to copy over this section because we're going to be using that in just a second. So right now we have this account nav class. So inside of our initialize.js, we are going to add something to it. So if you're not logged in, we want to add it right here, and it's going to be $account nav .html, and then we're just going to pass this li tag that we copied. So if you're not logged in, it's going to pass this li tag. If you are logged in, it's going to pass another kind of li tag. So if you are not logged in, it's going to have a login.html. So let's change this to login. And we're going to copy this again. So if you are logged in, we want it to have a log out link. So let's do log out. and let's make it go to logout.html, and then we also want to have another link next to it that's for the account. So let's make this go to /account and change this to account. Okay, so inside of our HTML now we have this account link and this logout link. So if we click on this, now that changes to log in, and you can log in, log out. Alright, so I think that's pretty much the authentication part of this system. Let me see if there's anything else that I need to add to it. So obviously this shopping cart here, this doesn't need to be here if you're not logged in. So let me see. I don't think I'm at that part yet where I want it to be at. I'm not. So what I'm going to do in the next tutorial video is basically take what we have here, and we are going to make it where it ties into the carts. So if we scroll up here, there's again, this is a little wonky of a solution. Like I found, if you do get a single, it's going to get a single based off an ID, but again, in order to get that ID, you need to run it against the current logged in user, and then that output, it's showing two different carts. So normally you wouldn't do that. I'm assuming it's for historical data, so we're going to take that as it's kind of like it's an all-in-one kind of shopping cart. So both of these are going to show one set of products. So for right now, I think I'm going to close out the tutorial because this is as far as we need to go for the user authentication part of it. Next week, or the next video that I do, we're going to be taking this and actually making it into a real cart page and have this number be updated according to how many items are stored inside of this user's cart. And just so I can test it for a different user. So if we log in right now, it's John D. It gives us all of John's information. So let me log out and see what other kind of users that they have. I didn't even test this while we were doing it. So let's do users, get all, and there is no other names being provided. Yeah, let's see what they're doing for their user login. So I wonder if this actually works. So let's try this username and try this password. No. Okay. Well, this is. There's got to be a way I can see it. So I'm going to come over here and go into our user.js, and then whenever it grabs these users, I'm going to just, for the time being, have it do a console.log data, so I can see which users it's actually getting. So let's do console login, and I need to make it way it doesn't redirect you. So let's just get rid of that for a second. Log in, and let's see what other users we have to choose from. So let's do Morrison and More2314. So Morrison, More2314. Let me copy this. I'm probably gonna need this. Let's log in. Oh, that's because I'm trying to copy over his password for his username. Okay, so let's just copy this. So more, what do they have down here? That's exactly what they had. More_2314, and then that password. So let's undo this so it'll actually pass through. Password More2314 is the username, and we log in. Okay, well, that worked. I don't know, it's just, I guess maybe I copied it wrong. So obviously it works. It's showing a different user right now compared to the one that we have set as the default. So let's log out again, log in. Alright, so it's got our account information being stored. And we can even go a step further. So let's say I just want to play around with it a little bit. So let's do, let's have it say welcome John whenever they get logged in. So let's come up to our navigation where we currently have this is being generated. You know what? I'll do that in another tutorial. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and close this out because it's doing everything that we want it to. It's got the authentication working, the user login information. I think this video's probably going to be fairly long. So if you enjoyed the video, let me know. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. There's a few more videos that are going to be coming out like this, and in case you haven't seen any of my Twitter or Instagram posts, I'm actually fixing to push out a new website for the dev drawer itself, and it's going to be using HTML, JavaScript to pull from an API from YouTube. It's going to be pretty cool how I'm doing it. And it's using PHP and all this kind of cool stuff, and it's basically going to make my life easier. So I kind of gave like a teaser of it on my social media profile, so check that out if you haven't seen it. Just be looking out for a new website, hopefully coming up in the next week or two. And then once I get done with this tutorial and I get done pushing out the website, I'm going to actually show you how I built the website by creating a tutorial series and giving away the code that I have for my website. So if you are a YouTube creator and you want to have something that kind of automates some of the process of pulling videos down from YouTube, I highly suggest that you watch it. But for now, this tutorial is done. I do appreciate you watching. If you like it, thumbs up. If you're not subscribed and you want to see more videos like this, then hit the subscribe button with the bell notification so you'll know whenever I get to do a new video. But for now, I'm going to cut it off. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.